Live from Shore Manor Studios, this is Tales from a Small Town Journalist with Matt Shore.
Hi guys, thanks for checking out this episode of Tales from a Small Town Journalist, the podcast dedicated to all the weird and wonderful stories you are only going to hear about from reporters working in small communities. Small communities just like yours. I'm Matt Shore, and I was one of those small town reporters for almost 10 years before I finally hung up my notepad, my camera, and in that time I had some really unique and interesting experiences dealing with the public, and I got to know a lot of other reporters who also had unique and interesting experiences working with the public. Before I go any further, I do want to make sure and mention this is a listener-supported podcast, supported by wonderful folks just like you. There are a couple of great ways that you could show us some support. Before I get into those, I want to make sure and mention one way that we got some great support this past month was for our Kickstarter. I launched another Kickstarter for Moby Dick, Back from the Deep, issue number 4. Really proud that I've been able to keep this thing going for so long. And we got another great response. We had another successful campaign. And just for everybody out there who did pledge to us and ordered copies, I promise you they're on their way. If you haven't received them yet, you will very soon. Thank you for your support. Some other great ways to show some support would be to visit my website, www.mattshore.net. You can go check out the merchandise place there, the bookstore, and see if there's anything that strikes your fancy. In addition to Moby Dick, we've got other comic books. We've got other books for young and old. So check it out, see if anything looks good to you. But another great way to show support would be just spread the word about this crazy podcast and all the wonderful stories that we have to tell. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a loved one. Keep it socially distanced, though. We're not quite out of this pandemic yet, although we are getting there. Good news on that front. But use Twitter, use Facebook, use, what else is there? TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat. There are like 100 different types of social media you can use these days, but anything you can do just to get the word out, send a text. Remember that? Send a text or really go old school with an email. That'd be pretty fantastic, wouldn't it? Anyway, just let people know about this crazy podcast and all the cool stories we have on it. This episode, I got to chat with Gary Estwick, the new editor for the Leaf Chronicle newspaper here in my hometown of Clarksville. This was an interesting interview because prior to doing this, Gary and I had never met. This was pretty much a cold call. So we shot from the hip on everything. So that made for some good conversation, some interesting conversation, and got a little bit deep as well. So kind of ventured into the weeds on various topics and things facing the nation and facing journalists right now. So it was a great conversation, and Gary had some cool stories to tell. He tried to dangle a few carrots in front of me, like, well, we'll talk about this again later. And I said, no, you've got to tell me those stories. So without further ado, I'm not going to dangle any carrots in front of you guys. Let's switch gears and go bring Gary onto this now and hear what he has to tell us. All right, I'm chatting with Gary Estwick, the new editor for the Leaf Chronicle. Thank you for joining me, Gary. This is actually our first time meeting, so this will be kind of interesting. We'll be getting to know each other for the first time as we do this interview, so that maybe that'll add some excitement to this. So, Gary, thanks for joining me. How are you?
Pretty good. Let's see if one of us has a job after this is over. Let's see how that works out.
I'm sure it'll be fine. we need good editors, so they've got to hang on to you.
Is there such thing as a good editor, or is that just a bad reporter who just morphed to a butterfly or something? I don't know.
As a former editor, I'm going to go with the first one. I prefer that good editors.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, like I said, we're getting to know each other. We may stumble a bit throughout this conversation, but that's okay. It's live to tape, so to speak, and just that adds to the fun. So, but like I said, thanks for joining me, Gary. Let's get a little bit of your background so that people know a little bit more about you. We know you're the editor for the Leaf Chronicle, but there's a lot more to you than that. So tell me what brought you to where you are right now?
Well, friends. Sometimes they lead you down the right direction. Sometimes they don't. Really good friend of mine named Marlon Walker. He's actually the interim editor at the Clarion Ledger, the newspaper in Jackson, Mississippi. Me and Marlon, we've known each other since let's say just more than a decade. And we've been talking recently about journalism. I worked 18 years mostly in sports. I should say, actually, at that point, all in sports. I was a former sports reporter. So I've covered high school, professional, college sports, done a lot of enterprise writing, a lot of narrative writing. And I left the business in 2017. It's hard to love something that doesn't love you back. Worked in marketing as a copywriter for 5-6 years, and but still had maintained some friendships in the business, and Marlon was one of them. We really got to know each other because we both were living in Atlanta at the time. And I got a text from him out the blue. It said, "Somebody's about to call you about a job. Just listen." I was so mad that he said that last part. Because if he just would have said someone was calling you about a job, I'll put your name in, I'd have said, "No thanks, I'm not taking a call." So it was like a favor to just do me this favor and take this phone call. Oh. So I did, and ended up taking a job. So my first job back in journalism, my first job as a manager. Go figure. Sometimes you got to answer your phone. I guess that's the moral of the story.
Now, going from sports to the actual editor on top of everything, that must have been a pretty big change. So how's that going for you?
On the surface, it's a big change. In reality, I guess case by case for me, it's not. Sports is what I chose to write about, but it wasn't all that I cared about. It wasn't all that I kept up with. There's a whole other side to us as, newsflash to people. We're actually people too. We actually have interests too, outside of, as a matter of fact, if I think of the list of things that people may not realize as journalists, not only do they not realize we have interests outside of our beat, they don't realize that we may have no interest in our beat. I have covered a mini 0-0 tie soccer games that I had no interest in. I covered high school wrestling for 3 years in Akron, Ohio. The only thing I knew was it wasn't 1, 2, 3, you're the winner. It's just one. As far as like you have your back flat once, you're done. It's the only thing I knew for 3 years. So why was I a journalist? Because I love telling stories. So you wouldn't read my story to find out how Justin Slater scored 17 points in a wrestling match. You would read my story to find out that his dad was a former state champion. His uncle was a former state champion. His older brother was a former state champion. He would have been a state champion if he didn't mess up in the last 30 seconds of his final match of his junior year. This is his last chance to win a state championship. He already has a college scholarship lined up. He knows where he's going for college. This is about personal pride. This is about family pride. I can write a story. I can write the hell out of a story. I can tug on emotions. You can close your eyes and hopefully see see my words in an image. I can do that. That's what I do, regardless of what the subject. If it's a soccer game, if it's something more serious, like just a few weeks ago, I was covering the Atlanta massage spa shootings. And of course, anything else in between. That's what I do. That's what I believe in. That's what makes me say, I barely work for a living. I get paid for this. Wow, I get paid for this. That's neat. So.
Well, let's touch a little more of that. It sounds like wrestling was so exciting, but what other memorable experiences do you have covering sports, either in Akron or where you're now in Clarksville?
In the sports realm, let's see. So my first job out of college, I went to Southern University in Baton Rouge. I'm native of New Orleans. First job was in Austin, Texas. And so that's 2000. So Austin was a pretty cool place. It wasn't the metropolis, the super destination city it is now, but it was on its way. I still regret one of my regrets in life is that I didn't go to South by Southwest when I lived there. It was a pretty big deal there, but it wasn't the big deal it is now. Or it became. It was on its way, and I just it was I'll get there next year. It's not going anywhere. And I was only there for 2 years, and I interned the summer before. Um, so as a sports writer, we always joke amongst ourselves that we are some of the first and last people to leave the stadium because let's say more so the more prestigious the beat, like on a professional beat, like for an NFL game, when I covered the Titans too for the Tennessee in 2008 to 2010, you get to a game 3-4 hours in advance because you have to beat the fan traffic. And after the game is over, everybody's going home. You're working from there. You're writing your story from there. Most of the times, multiple stories, right? Might be 3-4 stories if it's a really busy, newsy game. So
on top of Twitter and social
media.
And everything.
Oh yeah. Well, geez, nowadays you're doing that during the press conference. You've got one ear listening to the player or coach. You got another ear that's listening to the other interviews that other reporters are doing. You've got your tape recorder. So really my tape recorder is picking up the stuff that the person in front of me is saying. I'm really listening to the competition and who they're interviewing. I've got my phone here looking at Twitter, and my other phone is doing the video recording. So it's a whole workflow. It's a nightmare, but it's fun. So I'm many times, I'm surprised I haven't been arrested for this. Many times I've been threatened to be arrested or kicked out. Yeah, because the last two people in the stadium, it's usually a sports writer and the maintenance crew, like for a high school stadium, and they want to go home. They're not trying to get any more hours. They want to go home. So sometimes, let's say the game would end around, so if it starts about 7:30, it might end about 10 o'clock, 10:05. I'm running down the field. And the moment the game is over, especially if the game is not close. So I knew, I can walk down the steps and take my last final stats because, in high school sports, you're taking your own stats. So the moment the game is over, the guys are shaking hands, I'm right there already interviewing them before they jump in the line because I'm moving fast because every second counts so I can hit my 10:45. That's usually the deadline. Sometimes they want to close up the stadium like 5 minutes after the game. Bruh, I still got 35 minutes to write. Are you kidding me? I've literally had to convince some folks, hey, just give me the key. I'll lock it up, or I'll just close it up behind me. So it's been many a times on a high school beat, I have closed up your favorite local high school sports stadium because they said, I'm out of here, dude. Just lock the door behind yourself. Let
me think about if that ever works, though. Apparently it did.
Somewhere in Central Texas, I think it was Waco because, high school football playoffs, a lot of times, they're going to play in neutral settings. It was another one of these times where, again, I've got a story to write and it's going to, I'm going to use up every second of the before deadline because I want to make it a really good story. So I'm finally finished. I'm packing up my stuff. I'm walking outside. I'm at the gate. I tug on the gate. It's locked. I'm looking at somebody on the maintenance crew on the other side of the gate. And I'm like, yo, the gate's locked. He's like, jump over, and then gets in his truck. Now, I'm proud of my athletic prowess, but let me tell you, especially back in the day where you're carrying a bunch of equipment, where I felt like a mini version of MacGyver. You know, it's not just me coming over that gate at my, 155 pounds, or, it's also all my equipment that's with me. So that was not fun. That was not fun.
I have to ask, did you make it over?
Oh yeah, I made it over.
Oh, okay, good.
Oh yeah, I made it over. That's almost as good as the time I almost fought a band a couple of times, but I'm sure we'll get into that some other time.
Oh, you can't just leave that out there. You got to fight with a band. Was this a high school marching band or like
yes, high school marching band?
Oh no, you got to tell this one. You can't give me that one. And just angle it there.
So this actually happened twice in the same athletic season. And they both incidents happened, separate incidents happened in Birmingham. I don't know what it is about Birmingham. Okay. Again, I'm from New Orleans. If you know anything about New Orleans, music is important to us, just like food. Our high school bands are very competitive. I don't like to admit it because I was a semi-athlete, but some of the best athletes at our school, they're actually in the band, not always on the football or basketball team, because you can get a scholarship just as easily in a band scholarship because they get that much recognition. So I say that to say I understand band culture. I also went to Southern University, which is one of the top college bands in the nation. We have performed in front of presidents. We have performed overseas and whatnot. I lived in the unofficial band dorm, White Hall. I understand, short of getting the paddle myself, I understand band culture. So this is not just drumline. I actually knew people that were in that movie because I went to school with them that they hired to be in the movie. So I understand band culture. That being said, the year is 2017. I'm covering the state basketball championships for the state of Alabama. I'm walking back to the press room, which is under the rafters. And there's a band from a school I can't remember. It's good for them. They're slowly filing out and leaving the area. Now they're not doing it where it's one person here and one person here and one person here. They're really tight and it's in uniform. They're frankly embarrassing. There's a couple people that are up close and doing it, and one person, but there's about 5 feet between one person here and 2 feet with another one and 17 feet for another. I'm on deadline. I'm writing, every game there's another story, right? So and I'm not exaggerating when I say 17 feet. There's a huge distance between one group of people and another group. So I'm walking by. Oh, Lord. One of the kids ran up and tried to push me back the way I came. So all these folks could go by. And there was a few seconds where, is this really happening? Nah, where's the camera? Where's the Candid camera went off air? Come on, Ed McMahon doesn't do this anymore. Dick Clark is still, this is, I think, no, this is really happening. And in my mind, the scary part was, in my mind, I worked through everything that could happen in the next 45 seconds. If I do this or do that, I'm okay. If I defend myself against this kid and another one's going to jump in and defend myself against that kid, then another 8 of them are going to jump in. And how long is it going to take security to come? How long is it going to take the police to come? Is this going to make the national news? Who's going to get injured? Who's going to be in the hospital? I'm going through all this within, in my head. I yell out for security. And I'll say that I didn't I didn't defend myself at all like I could have, like I had the right to do, like I guess I could even say should have, but that's neither here nor there. I don't know. So, oh man, we end up not making the news, not being on CNN because I held back what I could have done in simple defense of myself, and decided to handle it more on the back end with some idiot administrators who clearly enabled the kids. So I understand why they were acting the way that they were. But that you certainly, I wouldn't be here right now. And that was just a scary situation because they literally were ready to fight. And don't forget, they've got instruments in their hands. Those are weapons.
Yes, they are.
I'm factoring all that in. In my mind, I see the press room, what the press room would have turned into. Yes, we literally were close to getting the fight. And that was the second time that school year. It happened in a football game, same situation. They're moseying around to get off the field. I'm moving around because I'm doing my job. And a couple of kids literally ran up to me and said, "You can't walk through our line." Again, this is not like a tight line where I'm jumping through. There's plenty of, there's at least 15 feet distance between one group of people and another. And I go by. I remember pausing and saying, "Should I?" I was like, they don't have a serious line, I'm gonna go by. That happened twice, same school year. No wonder I left journalism. I think it wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't safe.
I'd like to tell you that it's gotten better, but those are the stories they don't prep you with while you're in college learning about it. It's like, hey, here's what you might face. I guess they figure if they did, then nobody would finish.
Yeah. What is it about? So someone made me jump over I didn't tell you how tall that fence was, but that the gate was, but let's just say it was somewhere around the 10 feet, 12 feet mark in Texas. So I had that. I had 2 incidents in 1 year, almost, close to fighting a band. But then I did have a gun pointed at me when I covered Hurricane Katrina, but we don't have to talk about that.
You'll leave that one dangling too, huh? We can revisit that one another time. That could be a bit heavy.
So the year was 2005. I'm working for the Akron Beacon Journal. It's a Knight Ridder newspaper in Ohio, LeBron James' hometown. I think this is his rookie year. I think it's his rookie year in the NBA. Hurricane Katrina catches everybody off guard, and including the media outlets. So they are rushing to send reporters to the region. Most of the reporters they're sending are news reporters and photographers, but they were trying to mix it in with people that just knew the area. And being a native, it certainly helped me too. So I fly to Shreveport and drive 4 hours to New Orleans, meet up with some reporters, lose a car in the water while I was driving it, which was not fun, which I'm still, almost 20 years later, I am still hearing about that car. I was on a conference call today with someone with Gannett. It's the parent company for the Leaf Chronicle. 11,000 employees, several hundred newspapers across the country. I was still expecting him to say something about that. Like, I am forever the reporter who lost the car in a hurricane. But anyway, I'll digress on that. Let's circle back to it. So I'm with a reporter named Susanna Naismith. She's worked for the Miami Herald, both Knight Ridder papers, and we're driving around town looking for news. And we run across what looked like a, what do you call it, a truck where you'll see them refilling gas stations because it's like a fuel truck basically, and it looks like there's a couple of members of the National Guard reserve with them, and he sees us from a distance. We're way across the street. We're several hundred feet away. Everybody's safe. Ain't nothing going on. But this was the early aftermath of Katrina. So everybody is still on edge because you just had the police chief say that they're raping babies and throwing them off the terrace level of the Superdome, which never happened. But everyone is scared, on alert, not sure what's going on. National Guard members saw us, or he saw me, depends on what you believe. I like to think he saw us. My colleague, Susanna, who's white, said he saw you. And he pointed his rifle at me. Again, we're several hundred feet away. I didn't feel my life was in danger in that moment. But I think I was being naive in that moment. Because in my mind, I'm a journalist. Or even if he can't see the press on the front of our vehicle, 300 feet away from him, his life's not in danger. Mine shouldn't be. We're going to be okay. That could have turned out a lot differently than I might not be here right now. There's a lot of implicit bias in what he did. That sometimes I think about. Sometimes I think about that. We all are programmed to, like it or not, to see certain things based on experiences of what we think. And he saw me and he felt threatened. Life's not all rosy, I guess. I've done all the talking. Where are the questions? When am I going to get some questions? I feel like, I'm standing up. Don't you have like a red couch I could lay on or something? You should be smoking a cigarette, taking notes. Interesting.
Drinking wine.
No tea for it.
Yeah. You make a good point about implicit biases, and they certainly do exist. And I think in situations that are, we'll just say tense, like the aftermath of a hurricane, I think those biases, and we don't realize they have, I think they get heightened. Just when you're just more on alert, I just think it's not a justification. It's just, I think it's just what it is, and it sucks. It feels really hollow as a white man saying something like that, but it's all I got. But memories that I have of Katrina, because I was safe away from it. I was in West Kentucky at the time, and I actually worked for a television news studio. This is back before everything was automated. We, like me and these two other people, would be in there with those cameras, running them all over that studio, making sure we had them on all these right points.
Okay.
And as they were covering all that, the memory that I have was just this distinct feeling of helplessness, because I just saw, all I see are these images of people. You can tell they're struggling, they're in danger. Like the hurricane's passed, but they're still flooding. Their lives are in danger. And just like, gosh, I want to do something. And I was only working part-time, and gas prices were through the roof. So basically I was spending my entire paycheck driving to and from work. It's like, I at that moment in my life, I really couldn't do anything. All I could do was just watch this misery unfolding. And it was, that's my biggest, that's my personal memory of Katrina. And yeah, compared with somebody who was there, it seems really weak, but that's, I was just thinking about that, where I was at during all that time. And it was, I was incredibly fortunate that I was out of the path of danger, but you just watch it. It's like, gosh, what can I do? I want to do something. And I remember one guy in the studio said, I wish I could just go to the people who are driving down there and just hand them $5 and say, hey, here's something for gas. It's not much, but maybe it'll help a little bit just to help out. Cause Katrina was, of all the two worst hurricanes that I think I have, seen in my life were Katrina, and I forget the name of it, but the most recent one in Puerto Rico. Those two were just the most brutal. that I think I have seen images of.
Mm-hmm. You know, can you look it up real quick? What's the hurricane that came? There was a hurricane that came the week after Katrina. If you look that up, that was it was in Texas, and I'll tell you the story. To me, or maybe it might have been 2 weeks after Katrina. That was the scarier hurricane, and let me explain why.
Was it Harvey? It didn't seem right.
Harvey sounds right. I thought it was Harvey, but I didn't know if I was making that up.
The year's wrong, but regardless, hurricane right after Katrina in Texas.
So people in New Orleans, hurricane is just part of living there, and we have a drink called a hurricane. You know, it sounds like you've had one before. It's like you had a few, one or three, huh?
I haven't had a hurricane, no, but I do like the ballsiness of having a drink when you're right there on the coast of the Gulf, naming it a hurricane.
Absolutely. I mean, if you hopefully have the financial ability, you put aside a few $100 every summer and fall because you expect to leave on short notice to go somewhere, you know, safe for a couple of days, you know, in a hotel or by a friend's house, because a hurricane is on the way and it's not going to hit directly, but you don't know, and you don't want to, you know, two things in the world, and two things in life you don't want to be: dead right and dead wrong. So you leave. Or at least if it's higher, if it's a 3 or higher, I would say before Katrina, if it was a 4, people are leaving or thinking about leaving. Now, if it's a 3 or a strong 2, they're thinking about it. So that's one thing. It's changed, but 2 weeks after Katrina, there were people that were running out of gas on the interstate in Houston that felt like they were about to die. Because remember, Katrina hit and nobody expected it to be what it was. So they didn't have time to be scared. 2 weeks after Katrina, roughly a week and a half, they were like really scared. And they were literally people running in their cars for a couple of days, scared to death that they're going to die right there. That had to be some scary mess. That was scary.
It would be.
Oh, yeah. That was, you know, everything else with Katrina was just a learning lesson of seeing law enforcement, seeing city, state officials that normally walk around with their chest out, with a certain air about them, a certain confidence. Nothing's wrong with that. Just now transformed to looking like deer in headlights. You know, as members of the media coming from out of state, we had better equipment than they did at one point. Early on, we were coming, you know, when I flew in, I had a sat phone. You know, a week later, we were bringing in, you know, driving in Winnebagos because there's nowhere to sleep. And yeah, it just hit them so hard, and they just did not see this coming. They were not ready for it.
I remember a lot of the criticism leveled at the mayor because, and I can't remember the poor guy's name, but
Ray Nagin.
Ray Nagin, that's it. Yeah, I remember him.
I can't tell you his prison number because he went to prison later, but I think he's out now.
Well, I just remember at the time we saw him almost like mentally break down in the public eye as everything unfolded, and I remember people just wanted to jump on him and criticize him, and I came to his defense to a few people talking to me about him. I just said, guys, look what this guy's dealing with. I don't know if he's a good mayor or not. I don't live in New Orleans, but good Lord, if faced with this, I can't imagine that I would react perfectly the whole time. So I don't know. I'm not, if he ended up in prison, I'm not going to defend him too much, but I remember in that moment, I just thought, my gosh, just everything that's unfolding for this guy right now. That's just a lot for a person to deal with.
Yeah. You are the face of an ailing city to the world. So it's a lot. you have a small amount of blame, but truth is, we're talking about infrastructure, the reasons why there was a Hurricane Katrina, which damaged the city because of, therefore, decades, money had not been invested into the infrastructure to protect the city. New Orleans is think of I'll use this is right, Bobby. This is a glass. New Orleans is at the bottom. If you don't have a dam or a levee, this is what New Orleans is going to look like. I didn't plan this; it was just right here. So,
and for those who are listening rather than watching on YouTube, this is a glass full of water.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like New Orleans is unique in that sense. We always finally take action after the disaster hits. It wasn't until after Titanic that somebody finally decided, you know what, maybe we should have enough lifeboats for everybody, and we should have life vests that actually make you float with your head above the water.
Yeah. Oh, and here's another one. Maybe hydrogen isn't the best fuel, the best way to travel.
Yeah, exactly. We learn everything the hard way.
Yeah. Sometimes it feels like the American way. It also, when we're lucky, it leads to some serious ingenuity. I mean, we wouldn't have microwaves without, space flight. So, go figure. Who wants to cook their food from scratch all the time? Just saying.
Yeah. Positives tend to always come out of disasters, but it would be nice if we could find a way to make those positives happen and prevent the disasters. But oh well.
Yeah. Leave that for the comic books. That's a best chance.
Yeah. Well, this has really been a great conversation. Thanks so much for covering everything. And I like to let the folks that join me, I like them to just tell their stories. So that's why I tried not to jump in too much. You had some good stuff to tell.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now, when I come back on the show, see, I'm inviting myself back. We got to do something with his background. See, we got, you got the blinds here. You got the wall. I need some stuff on the wall. We got to dress this up. I know we're still in the middle of a pandemic. I get it, but we gotta get the studio going. Get the studio going.
Okay. Can you have some, would you and the Leaf Chronicle be willing to invest some money and get me a studio, or we can revisit that later, right?
I'm going to come back to that one, but
okay.
but video is something that I'm working. That is one of my, I've been the Leaf Chronicle for 6 months. It's my second 6-month goal. The second half of my first year. So you might be surprised. We might have something for you.
We'll see. We'll table that conversation for now. But how has before we wrap up, how have your 6 months with the Leaf Chronicle been?
It's been amazing. Work with great people, great town full of a lot of passionate people. That's been great. I spent the first couple of months working from Atlanta. Been the next couple of months commuting back and forth, but it's good to finally be in the city. I'm glad I made it just before Clarksville closed, because I've learned that Clarksville's not letting anybody else move here. So I made it just in time before it officially closed. So
has it closed?
That's what I hear. People online tell me it's closed. When like in different Facebook groups, they say, "Hey, I'm moving to Clarksville in 6 months and want to know where should I find a barber?" And so they'll be like, "Nope, we're not here. Nobody's home. Don't come. No one's gonna answer. Don't come. We're closed."
Something tells me that you will not be the last of a whole bunch of people that get here just before it closes. So
yeah, you're right about that. So,
but welcome to Clarksville. It is a cool town. I like it a lot. I've been here about 6-7 years now. It's a cool place.
Very cool. Very cool. Very cool.
Actually, longer than that. I'm letting time get away from me. Closer to 8 or 9 years. So.
Okay, you coming up on that 10 spot.
Yeah, we're getting there. But yeah, it's a cool town, and good people at the Leaf Chronicle. Tell Jimmy and George that I said hello.
I will do that. Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you again. We will definitely have to do this again sometime. I really do appreciate it.
Sound great. See you soon.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Appreciate you taking the time to join me. That was a fun and rather insightful conversation, one of the things we discussed, and I've thought about it since we talked, that I wish I had thought to say in our conversation when we talked about implicit and unconscious biases, when I said it is what it is. I wish I would have thought to include that, it is what it is right now. But it doesn't have to keep being the way that it is right now. We can be better, and we need to be better, and it's not going to be easy. It's going to take all of us, looking inside and recognizing whatever shortcomings we may have, especially when it comes to things like unconscious bias, because by its very nature, you're not aware that it's there. This is something that I don't feel like I'm being political when I mention this, because this is not something that should be political. I know it gets politicized a lot, but this is really something that, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Reform Party, if they're still a thing, liberals, moderates, conservatives, this is something I really think we can all agree is a bit of a no-brainer, that there are problems that do exist. This is not a matter of like various opinions. Like the research is there, the evidence is there. We know, really, we all know that these problems exist and that something needs to be done. And it's going to take all of us working on it. It's not simply enough to just say, well, I'm not prejudiced. Well, actually, you probably are. It's instilled in us. I think there's research that shows some of it's even genetic in a way. Like we evolved in this specific way as a means of survival, to have distrust of people outside of our tribe. It's inevitable. So in order to be, a society that really does embrace one another and work together, we're all just going to have to recognize that these shortcomings exist within us and that we need to do something about them. But anyway, moving on from there. Thank you again for checking out this episode. Thank you again to Gary for taking the time to speak with me. That was a great conversation. I definitely want to have another one in the future. I want to know all about how you progress as the editor, the brand new editor for the Leaf Chronicle newspaper. As we close out, I guess it's about time for me to switch gears, move over to the cheap plugs section of the program. This podcast is a part of Shore Manor Studio on YouTube, where all of our episodes are now stored in their entirety and with video. So look us up there or go to tinyurl.com/Shore Manor YouTube. You can also sign up for our official newsletter, the Shore Manor newsletter, at tinyurl.com/Shore Manor newsletter. You can also look us up on our official website at www.mattshore.net, where you'll find this and previous episodes archived. Just click on the podcast link at the top of the page. And if you'd like to connect with me directly, you can find me on Twitter at @TheMattShore and Instagram at @TheShore. Or if you're old school, you can email me at mattshore@hotmail.com. Thanks again for checking out this episode. Everybody stay safe out there. We're still working on finishing out and getting through with this pandemic, but we still got to take care of ourselves and we've got to take care of one another. So be good to one another, be kind to one another. And so closing out, keep listening and keep reading. Thanks.